over the years, there's been a lot of debate about the relationship between Gin Ichimaru and Rangiku Matsumoto. Kubo does a fantastic job of subtly showcasing their relationship, mostly within flashbacks and through one-sided narratives via the anime and the manga. We get a hint about their relationship within Bleach Opening 5, where we see somebody appear to hold Rangiku from behind, and then we get a close-up shot of the face and it's Gin Ichimaru with his signature smile. These glimpses that we get via the early portion of the Bleach story reveals that there could be more than just a platonic friendship between these two characters. Gin betraying the Shinigami during the Soul Society arc is a massive plot twist within the Bleach story, and there were some fans who were upset with how Gin's character arc had ultimately ended when he had failed to kill Aizen during the fake Karakura Town arc. The relationship between Gin and Rangiku is critical within Bleach. As a story, it delves deep into the theme of revenge via characters like Komamura and Tozen, but also through Gin's redemption arc. Gin's relationship with Rangiku further reinforces this theme of revenge. Some fans believe that Gin's character is far from redemption because he has committed far too many heinous acts for the justification to be that Gin is just seeking out revenge against Aizen for having stolen something precious from Rangiku. In this video, I want to explore one of the most mysterious and underrated aspects of Bleach, as we discuss the relationship between Gin and Rangiku. Be sure to stick around until the very end of this video, as I'll be exploring how their relationship had developed from their time in Rukongai all the way up until their final interaction on the day that Gin was killed by Aizen. Hopefully by the end of this video, you'll know everything about the relationship between Gin and Rangiku. Discover the Undead Collection and be amongst the very first to join us on our journey over at getsuga.com. The first time that we see Gin and Rangiku meet is within chapter 129 of the manga. They're both living within the Rukongai district, where only the poorest citizens of the Soul Society live. Rangiku is passed out on the ground, and Gin approaches her, stating that the reason that she must have passed out is due to the hunger that she must feel, as a result of her possessing high spiritual energy. Gin introduces himself as Rangiku notes that he has a strange name. She then wakes up to the present day as we realize that she was having a dream about the first time that she had met Gin. Their relationship is obviously important to her as she sees him in her subconscious moments. When Rangiku notes that she has slept a long time, Hitsugaya is able to empathize with her and states that it must have been hard for her to see Momo accuse Rangiku's former classmate Gin of Aizen's supposed murder. Rangiku pauses here for a moment as she ponders over the word classmate, and as the reader, it's as if there is more to be said for their relationship than just Gin having studied with her in the past. Rangiku even goes as far as to express doubts about Gin's involvement with Aizen's murder. She has an off-guard moment where she even calls him by his first name, but then remembers that she needs to address him as Captain Ichimaru. All of this is really out of character for Rangiku, as Kubo usually portrays her as the comic relief character thanks to her light-hearted nature. So seeing her just slow down and think emotionally about the recent events of the story hints to us that Gin is someone who lives rent-free in her head. Kubo cleverly uses dreams as a narrative device within this chapter to expand upon the history between these two characters. This is incredible setup for the later story beats so that we as the reader can empathize with Rangiku when Gin is finally revealed to be a traitorous snake when he leaves with Aizen for Hueco Mundo. When Gin and Rangiku were growing up within Rukongai, Rangiku notes how Gin had a bad habit of leaving Rangiku most of the time and not telling her where he was going. Maybe he had wanted to distance himself from Rangiku because he felt that he was not worthy of her love and devotion, because Gin is fully aware of what type of person he is and the effects that his actions have had on others. In chapter 414 of the fake Karakura Town arc, Aizen notes his surprise when Gin falsely reports that he has killed Rangiku. He states that he had thought that Gin would have showed mercy to her. Gin then plainly states that he does not possess this notion of mercy. He describes himself as being somebody who slithers while whilst looking for prey, and when he finds it, he swallows the people that he cares about whole, as Gin portrays himself as a selfish, cold-blooded, ruthless killer. A lot of what Gin said here was to convince Aizen of his loyalty to him. In actuality, Gin did in fact have mercy on Rangiku, but it seems like Gin's mercy starts and stops with Rangiku. So while Gin is lying to Aizen about killing Rangiku, Kubo inserts this description of Gin's character, likening him to a snake, because Gin did in fact behave in a cold-blooded, ruthless manner to almost every other Shinigami in the story. Look at how he manipulated his lieutenant Kira, using him as a pawn to fight against Momo when she was suspecting Gin of Aizen's murder. In actuality, Gin had known that Aizen was still alive, but just like a snake carefully slithering and watching its prey, he had watched on as Kira had defended Gin's innocence, completely taking advantage of the loyalty that Kira has for his captain. He even played along with Aizen's plan to manipulate Hitsugaya into believing that Gin may have been responsible for Aizen's death. In chapter 101, Hitsugaya notes that Gin was preparing to kill Momo, as Gin denies this, but Hitsugaya then threatens to kill Gin if he dares to even think about hurting Momo. Gin goes as far as to manipulate Hitsugaya into fighting him, and it's here where we see Gin open his eyes and give his signature smile, just like a snake who has found its prey and is about to pounce. When it seems as though Gin is trapped by Hitsugaya, he attempts to kill Momo as a distraction, but his strike ends up being blocked by Rangiku. She tells Gin to withdraw his sword or else he'll have to deal with her. Rangiku's involvement was significant, as Hitsugaya in chapter 133 had stated that if she did not arrive on the battlefield, then Momo would be dead. When Rangiku thinks back on Gin leaving the battlefield, she thinks about this bad habit of his where he disappears without telling her where he is going, and how this bad habit hasn't changed since he was a child. During the Soul Society arc, throughout all of this web of manipulation which Aizen had orchestrated, Rangiku was unfortunately very conflicted because all of the parties involved were very close to her. You have Gin, who was doing the manipulating, who had in fact grown up with Rangiku, and then you have her captain Hitsugaya, who is a victim of all of the manipulation that Gin and Aizen had done on him and Momo. So to learn more about Gin and his true motives, let's find out why he had decided to join Aizen in his quest to become a false god. In chapter 414 of the manga, we learn that Aizen needed a Hokyoku in order for him to achieve his goals. The Hokyoku was initially described to be a device which had allowed to dissolve the barrier between a Shinigami and a hollow. It was later described as a wish-granting orb, as it pretty much manifests the heart's desire of its wielder. On Aizen's quest to create his own Hokyoku, he had shaved the souls of hundreds of Shinigami and hundreds of Rukongai residents, but all of this was nowhere near enough because a fragment of the Soul King is required for a Hokyoku to be created. He had found this fragment of the Soul King within the soul of Rangiku. Despite taking this precious part of Rangiku's soul, his Hokyoku was still incomplete. He was aware that Urahara was creating his own Hokyoku, so he had then gone about to devise a plan to combine the two Hokyokus in order to form a complete functioning Hokyoku. Within the manga, we actually see Gin as a child staring as three Shinigami kneel on the ground to Aizen. In one of the Shinigami's hand appears to be a pink orb of energy. This in fact was the piece of Rangiku's soul which Aizen had removed in order to add it to his Hokyoku. Following this, we see a panel where Rangiku appears to be lying on the ground helplessly, and in the next frame, Gin then stares at Aizen with a cold look on his face. He silently thinks to himself that he is the leader of the Shinigami who had hurt Rangiku, as he vows to then kill him. This expression is reminiscent to how a snake looks at its prey, with how you see Gin's peering eyes looking through a bunch of leaves, similar to a snake on the ground hiding within the grass staring at its prey. In the flashback that's revealed within chapter 416, when Gin is about to leave Rangiku, she runs after him asking where he is going. She questions if that's a Shinigami robe that he is wearing. As she wonders where he found it, Gin responds by telling her that he has made up his mind. He's going to become a Shinigami. He desires to do this in order to change things, all for the purpose of not wanting to see Rangiku cry anymore. Kubo does an incredible job of explaining Gin's true motives as he intertwines all of these flashbacks with the very moment that Gin attempts to stab Aizen, as he reveals the true power of his Bankai Kamishini no Yari. Gin's final moments in chapter 416 16 reveal his thoughts as he thinks to Rangiku that he couldn't do it. He couldn't return to her what was taken from her, but he feels glad in his final moments that he was at least able to apologize to her. Gin's physical state elicits a very strong emotional response from Rangiku as she realizes that he is about to die. As we see her pouring her eyes out, the scene then shifts to Ichigo arriving onto the battlefield after having completed his training within the Dangai. For the sake of revenge, Gin hurt a lot of people. He had waited and plotted for over 110 years just so that he could return this one precious thing that was stolen from the person that he had cared about. Ultimately, this is the strongest evidence that we have that Gin and Rangiku were more than just friends, and that a romantic relationship of some sorts existed between the two of them. A rare insight into the life that both Gin and Rangiku had lived together within Rukongai is revealed within a bonus chapter numbered -12.5. This special chapter focuses on the birthday of Hitsugaya as we get a glimpse of Rangiku, Momo, Aizen, and Hitsugaya celebrating the birthday of the 10th Division captain. It's really heartwarming to see this slice of life moment as the characters are just simply enjoying themselves before all of the serious stuff kicks off later on. So everyone is sitting on a rooftop enjoying the fireworks when Aizen wishes Hitsugaya happy birthday. Hitsugaya states that birthdays don't mean much to the people from Rukongai due to the fact that they were not born within the Serite like the nobles, meaning that people from Rukongai don't really remember the day that they were born, and dates of birth are usually speculated based on the words of others. We then get a flashback to when Gin and Rangiku were children, with Gin asking her when her birthday is. She says that she does not know and reveals that before the two of them had met, things like that had no meaning for her. These words pretty much cement that Rangiku's life was pretty empty before she had met Gin. The fact that their meeting was a focal point in her life lets us know just how much weight Gin holds within her heart. Gin then stamps the official date of Rangiku's birthday as the same day that the two of them had met, thus placing an irrevocable seal on this unforgettable relationship. Additional information about Gin and Rangiku is revealed within the official bootleg Karaburi Plus Bleach databook, as we learn that both Gin and Rangiku had enrolled at the same time at the Shinigami Academy, as they both were training together to enter into the Gotei 13. This databook also reveals that the two characters share a love of dried persimmons owing to the day that they had met when Gin had offered her some. In chapter 412, where we finally get to see Gin and Rangiku reunite, Gin asks her why is it that she had come when she can barely stand. Instead of answering Gin's question, Rangiku fumbles and explains how she had gotten here, but Gin reiterates that he didn't ask how she got here, but rather why she is here when she can barely stand because of Aizen's intense spiritual pressure. She explains that she's here because he is here. Now she can finally ask him in person, why is it that he had decided to serve Aizen? If you read between the lines here, she kind of deflects here and Gin points her out. When she says, why did you betray Kira who trusted you so completely? Gin wastes no time on immediately calling her out as he asks if she is serious. He says, betrayed Kira even though he trusted me. He then asks if she is sure that she is referring to Kira here. If you want me to spell it out, then it was Rangiku who had completely trusted Gin and who had felt betrayed by him when he had decided to serve Aizen. Gin then expresses his disappointment that she had arrived onto the battlefield because she is pretty much in the way of his plans to kill Aizen. This is evidenced by him drawing his sword on Rangiku and referring to her as a nuisance. To understand Gin and Rangiku's relationship, you really need to understand Kubo as a writer. During the Jump Festa 2023 panel, Kubo had revealed some details about how he writes stories. In reference to Unohana vs Kinpachi, Kubo states that there are some scenes that they are refusing to show. He speaks about how Unohana has her own background story of how she had grown up, how she had joined the Gotei 13, and when exactly she had picked up a Zanpakuto and began fighting. Kubo adamantly states that if he were to include all of these details, then the story would veer off to the side, thus losing a sense of direction to the plot. So instead of showcasing all of these additional details about Unohana's backstory, Kubo had decided to only show us a brief flashback of Unohana's first encounter with Kinpachi. Kubo says that there are many similar instances to this within Bleach, and when Kubo goes on to talk about if we're going to see Unohana's past revealed at some point, he explains that he doesn't think that it's going to be shown to us. Masakazu Morita, the voice actor of Ichigo, responds by stating that Unohana is described as the greatest criminal within the history of the Soul Society, so a story of when she was a criminal is never going to be told. As he wonders wonders how such an incredible criminal ended up becoming a member of the original Gote 13. Ichigo's voice actor is a massive fan of Bleach just like all of us, as he tells Kubo that fans would really like to find out what Unohana's backstory is. Now Kubo's response is very important as it reveals his method of storytelling. He tells us that there is a saying that he really likes, and the saying goes, "If it is hidden, it is the flower." Kubo goes as far as to reiterate that this is the motto of his work. This quote originates from a book called The Flowering Spirit, written by an individual called Ziami. This quote, "If it is hidden, it is the flower," is in reference to how the audience are most impressed when they see an unexpected thing happen. For example, the beauty of a magic trick is not knowing what is going to happen next. If the audience were to know what's going to happen next, then the magic trick becomes boring. Therefore, by keeping some of the content a mystery or a secret, the work becomes more interesting. And so by keeping a secret and not revealing everything to your readers allows them to be further impressed and thus speculate more upon your work. And it's for this very reason that we're making this video speculating about the relationship between Gin and Rangiku. This is definitely something that was hidden within the work of Bleach, and when you analyze and examine it, the relationship between Gin and Rangiku does in fact reveal itself to be a flower. Towards the end of the Fate Karakura Town arc in chapter 423, we see Hitsugaya training to get stronger, as Rangiku appears to be standing guard outside of the cave, as she lingers over the thought that everyone else is moving forward. The cause of her deep anguish is revealed in the next panel, as she ruminates over the fact that Gin did not leave anything to remember him by. The theme of lost love is further emphasized, as we see just how much of an impact that Gin had on Rangiku's life, as she states that if Gin did in fact leave something behind for her to remember him by, then she would never have moved on from him. Gin's passing leaves a void within Rangiku's heart, but at the same time this void allows her to embrace the fullness of life and to move on from his death. While some fans may feel frustrated with the way that Kubo handled Gin and Rangiku's relationship, I think all of the decisions that Kubo made in relation to writing their relationship is in line with his beliefs of if it is hidden, it is the flower. Just like I explained earlier, there is a lot of poetic beauty in not revealing everything to your reader. Now there is a possibility for Gin and Rangiku to have a reunion via the upcoming manga continuation of the Bleach Hell arc. Ever since the release of the one-shot chapter No Breeds from Hell in August of 2021, fans have been speculating that characters like Gin may make a reappearance within the Hell arc. Now on a final note, I want to talk about a question that Kubo had answered on his official fan club outside. A fan had noted that during the 1000-Year Blood War arc, there were no residents of Rukongai beyond the 5th district that were found to be wearing sandals, but yet as a kid Rangiku was seen to be wearing a pair of wooden sandals. Now this is like the subtle level of storytelling that Kubo does. Kubo answers this by stating that after Gin and Rangiku had met, they had slowly started to make their way into the inner districts of Rukongai where it was safer. Gin's wooden sandals and Rangiku's leather-soled sandals would make an appearance in one of the flashbacks involving their characters. This tiny piece of information helps to craft a feeling of intimacy, as we understand that Gin and Rangiku were rarely separated during their childhood. I think Kubo is definitely amazed when fans pick out these very tiny details, which all but hint towards an untold story that hasn't been revealed to us. So we've reached the point of the video where I want to now hand over the discussion to all of you. What do you guys think about the fascinating relationship between Gin and Rangiku? While Kubo never explicitly stated that there was a romantic relationship between these two characters, it still ends up being one of the most incredible romantic relationships within all of Bleach. Let me know all of your thoughts about these two fascinating characters and continue the discussion in the comments. What do you guys think about Kubo's writing style, and do you agree with this philosophy of if it is hidden, it is the flower? I look forward to reading all of your comments, and lastly, thank you for making it to the end of this video, and I cannot wait to see you in my next Bleach Explained video. A massive thank you goes out to all of my amazing Patreon supporters for helping to make this video possible. If you also want to support the channel and see your name in the end of my videos, then check out my Patreon, which has loads of perks like early video access and so much more. Thank you for sticking around till the end of the video, and whatever you contribute will mean a lot to me.